Welcome. Today's video is going to cover a variety of BFS reels, not really putting one against each other, but more so there's questions a lot of times of which BFS reel to buy depending on your uses, your budget and stuff like that. So if you're interested in that, make sure you keep watching and also comment down below what BFS reels you've been using. Alright, to start off with, what I'm going to start with is the Gekkabijin versus the Alphas Air TW. There's a bunch of different comments about that I see, so I'm just going to kind of set the record straight, at least in my opinion. I know it could be a little bit different depending on the user and the uses and stuff like that, but I'm going to try to touch on short range fishing, like stream fishing, and also even into like long distance and saltwater fishing as well, just so pretty much this video can encompass every angler and what they're looking to do. So to start off with, I will say this is a little bit of a disclaimer that all the differences I'm saying, for the most part, they're very small differences. So if you're looking for just all-around coverage, a lot of times, pretty much any of these BFS reels are going to be able to do it. But if you're looking to squeeze that little bit of extra of a certain attribute out of a reel, so to start off with the Silver Creek, the Daiwa Silver Creek, this came out early 2022. This is designed as like a short to mid-range casting reel. And how it does that has a fixed inductor on how the brakes work, but that's not really too important. What's more important is that it is capable of distance casting as well. Not like super far distance, but you can. I've used this in open water for bluegill and bass, and it's been just fine. I haven't noticed that this braking system, although it's tuned for short range casting, gave me any sort of hindrance with distance. But what this does, it has a little bit more control and also a little bit free at the same time versus the Daiwa Gekkabijin. This one isn't stock. I have some dress-up parts on there, but performance-wise, this is all stock. I found that the Silver Creek was better at distance casting than the Gekkabijin was at short-range casting, just because of the braking profile of the Gekkabijin. I found it was a little strong for short-range casting. It felt like my lure would hang up in the air a little bit. You saw that in my initial, I talk a lot about that in my initial review video of this reel. And I did do some head-to-head casting, distance casting, so I'm not going to talk about the straight-up performance of each reel. I'll have those links down below to those videos. But I will say the Gekkabijin would be my choice for. I have never did BFS saltwater fishing, so I'm not speaking from my personal experience, but just from how the reels are built and everything. The Gekkabijin would be my enthusiast pick for saltwater fishing, with the SLX BFS being my choice for a budget or your bang for your buck type reel. This reel is like $160, and it's pretty much the Curado BFS, which I will get to that later. So if you're watching saltwater, those are my two choices there. Moving in, the Alphas Air TW. Some people I just talked to a couple people about this reel on Instagram, and I feel it's pretty much obsolete now. Now, if you can get a good deal on it, I think it's worth picking up. It does do short range casting, and it also does long range casting pretty well. I think it's definitely better than the Gekkabijin with the short range casting, and it does do pretty good for like your all-around bass fishing, especially using a variety of different types of line. The Gekkabijin can get a little crazy using fluorocarbon or monofilament. Not nearly as bad as Daiwa recommends, but it's still much better with braided line. So I wouldn't say this is completely obsolete, but it is to that point of, unless you get a good deal on it, it's not really worth picking up. It doesn't have a clicking drag. Unless you prefer not having a clicking drag, then this could be a reel for you. I will say the Roro AX22 spool, and now it's AX24 spool, it's a little bit different. That will make any of these reels, any of those Daiwa reels I talked about, into a little bit better at casting lighter lures and also short range. It kind of evens the playing field between the three reels because it's the spool that makes the biggest difference. It's not really the reels themselves. So moving out of them, I will go into the Shimano Aldebaran BFS. This is a 2022 model. This is probably, if I had to pick one BFS reel, it would probably be this, in stock form, I should say. It does close range casting very well. you know, stream fishing, pitching, all that kind of stuff very well. And then it also does distance well. The only thing is distance with the Aldebaran compared to the Gekkabijin. The Gekkabijin does, I'd say the distance is about the same in my hands, but the Gekkabijin has a little bit more control, especially if there's a little bit of wind. But those differences are kind of small, so don't take it as the Aldebaran is just some wild crazy reel, because it's not. But I would say the Aldebaran would be my overall favorite. It's pretty smooth. It's not, and it does have a faster gear ratio now too. So the speed wise, I don't remember exactly what the inches per turn is, but between the two, but without looking, it is a very minor difference. And I do like the Aldebaran for my all around BFS fishing. Now switching gears a little bit to the KastKing. This is a KastKing Kestrel. It's actually the most surprising review I think I did in 2022. It does short range casting pretty decent. There are some modifications you could do to lower the braking profile. That was the only thing I felt it had a little bit too strong of a braking profile for stream fishing, especially with light lures. Now if you get to like 4 grams, it was just fine. But I really like this for bass fishing. I did a lot of bass fishing on that Kastking Icon BFS. These two are pretty much made it up for most of the year, and I really like this reel, especially for skipping. You can skip finesse bass plastics underneath docks with a lot of control with this reel. It's lightweight, it's solid, it's still smooth. I haven't taken it apart yet, but it is a very solid, dependable reel. And that was probably my biggest surprise that I had review and tackle probably in the last couple of years, to be honest. And on the affordable side of things, I know if you haven't ordered from Japan, I do have a link to that video down below, a process and how to order fishing tackle from Japan, because all of those reels except for the Kestrel so far have been ordered from Japan. Now the Curado BFS, that was kind of I guess the biggest hyped BFS reel, and one of the only available BFS reels in the U.S. market. I know that there are some online retailers that import reels and such, but this was a very good reel for me. I still use it. I use it mostly for bass fishing. Roro does make a spool for it, the CB26, that does dramatically increase its light lure capabilities and also its capabilities for casting in streams, both of which require a very low spool inertia, so it can start spinning without much force on there, whether it's because the lure is light and you're trying to get distance, or if you're casting short range, even with the slightly heavy, like say like a 3 or 4 gram lure, having that lighter spool and like say bearings and such, it helps to be able to be a lot more accurate. You don't have to force your cast and then stop with your thumb and then your lure slaps down on the water. That spool did make a big difference. And it is pretty much the same exact reel as the SLX BFS, which was released in Japan. A couple minor differences I go over in a different video, but this one is rated, it says specifically saltwater safe. I don't know if the Curado BFS, I don't think it specifically says saltwater safe, but if you've used other reels like in the Curado line and you've had success, rinsing your reels off or whatever, I'd imagine that the Curado BFS is pretty much could be treated the same. Which that leads me to another thing, that BFS reels themselves, they aren't much different than your typical bait casting reel, other than just the spool and the bearings for the most part. And a lot of BFS reels, they come with clicking drag systems like this. But other than that, like with the gears and the frames and everything, it's pretty much just like a normal bait casting reel. So don't think that these reels aren't capable of like true finesse bass fishing. Especially that the Kestrel, I really want to test the durability of the gears, and I was beating the crap out of this thing. Not physically, like smashing the boat deck or anything, but I was drag locked down. I'm pitching into different reeds and lily pads and such to be able to pull bass out, and some of them are pretty decent size. Especially for up where I live. I live way up in the northern United States, so my bass aren't very big. I also got into some pretty big smallmouth, and I think caught actually a couple pike with this thing. But I made sure that I was really trying to abuse those gears. And even for being aluminum gears that aren't Daiwa or Shimano, like a lot of people try to write off other brands, which sometimes I used to as well, but that KastKing really surprised me. And they also make the Kastking Zephyr, which is a more affordable reel. I would skip that if you can, but it's not going to be a complete waste of money if you do, if that is what you can afford. It does bass fishing quite well. It can do some panfish casting as well. You just have to be mindful of your brakes, especially with the wind. Something else to consider when getting a BFS reel, no matter the manufacturer, is most times you're going to want a faster gear ratio. Like this iFish Band Clamber, for example. I really do like the reel, especially for it being, not Daiwa or Shimano. It performed very well for me. I don't really have it in my lineup, like my regular lineup, because the gear ratio is kind of slow. Now, if I was going to be putting this on a reel that has like micro crankbaits or something, yeah, it would work out for me. But I just prefer faster gear ratios because a lot of times when you're finesse fishing, let's say with BFS reel, spinning reel, doesn't matter. You're hitting certain targets, like whether it's a stump or whether it's like, like a weed line or something. You're working that one area, and then you want that lure back to be able to cast back again. So that's one reason why I like to have a fast gear ratio. That's more so open water, and for stream fishing I like it too because again you're hitting those targets, and when you get like a certain part across the stream like coming back to you, you just want to hurry up and get that thing back, and you want to cast back in those holes, especially if you have some fish that are a little bit pressured. You want to be able to get that lure in front of their face as much as possible, and you're not going to be casting like bigger crankbaits with these reels, so you don't need the power, which would be one of the benefits of having a lower gear ratio, is having a little bit more torque to pull in bigger, like say deeper diving crankbaits for bass fishing, which you'd want a little bit lower gear ratio. With BFS fishing, the lures don't have as much resistance in the water, so you're not going to be like overworking these reels. Hopefully this video was beneficial to you. I just wanted to try to clear up any sort of confusion that maybe I made myself, maybe my posting, or other people, whatever. But I just want to make sure that hopefully you understand that the differences that people talk about these BFS reels, a lot of times they're very small, especially me, because I just get way into the details about things, especially when I have a certain product in my hand and I'm making a review series. I tend to get really into the weeds, and it might cause some confusion. So there isn't a huge difference overall. Even let's say this Curado BFS, or let's say the SLX BFS, which is like $160 versus that depends on exchange rate and stuff, versus the Aldebaran. Now, bass fishing, there's not a huge difference between these two reels. Like, I use the SLX BFS and the Curado BFS a lot for bass fishing, and there's not much of a difference when I'm casting, 3.5 to, I'd say about 4 grams and up, which is most of your finesse bass fishing is a little bit heavier than that anyway. Not much of a difference. So, I've had pretty good durability with these two reels. Now with like trout fishing and casting lighter lures and those little bit of refinement, it's going to cost you a little bit more money to squeeze out that little bit more performance. So you're not going to get as much value for your money, especially bass fishing. You're not going to really get the benefit of a more expensive BFS reel. But I do want to make sure that I cleared some things up, and also maybe if you're out shopping or whatever for a BFS reel, that this guide will help for you. I appreciate you watching this video, and if you're watching this video and you've used BFS gear for a long time, comment down below some of your just general thoughts on BFS reels, and maybe we can have this comment section be able to help the viewer make the best selection that they can within their budget or within their uses. Thanks for watching.